I never wanted you. Those 4 words, cold, sharp, and final, cut through the Thanksgiving dinner like a blade through warm butter. My mother didn't yell them. She didn't sob or slam a dish. She just said it, quietly, while passing the mashed potatoes to my sister, as if commenting on the weather. But the room froze. The clinking of silverware stopped. Even the oven timer seemed to hold its breath. I was 58. My mother, 82. And in that moment, I felt like the scared 10-year-old who once hid under the porch after breaking her favorite vase, convinced she'd never love me again. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. We'd gathered at my brother's house in suburban Cleveland, just like every year since Dad died 10 years ago. My sister Carol flew in from Phoenix. My brother Mark and his wife Diane hosted, their split-level home filled with the scent of sage, roasting turkey, and the faint hum of a football game muted in the den. The grandchildren, 3 of them, were upstairs playing video games, blissfully unaware that the adults downstairs were about to detonate decades of unspoken resentment. It started, as it often did, with something small. "Did you remember to bring the cranberry sauce, Ellen?" Diane asked, glancing at me as she set down a steaming casserole. "I brought the homemade kind," I said, a little too pointedly. "Not that canned jelly stuff." My mother, seated at the head of the table like a queen holding court, gave a dry chuckle. "Still trying to prove you're better than everyone else, aren't you?" I stiffened. "I'm just trying to contribute something decent to the meal." "Oh, please," Carol cut in, rolling her eyes. "You've been contributing your superiority complex since high school." And just like that, the dam cracked. Maybe if someone had actually raised me instead of leaving me with nannies and boarding schools, I wouldn't feel the need to overcompensate. I shot back, my voice trembling. Silence. Then my mother set her fork down with deliberate calm. "You think you had it hard? You had everything. Private schools, piano lessons, summers in Europe. Do you have any idea what I gave up for you?" "You gave up nothing," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "You gave me things. You never gave me you." That's when she said it. "I never wanted you." The air turned to ice. Carol gasped. Mark dropped his wine glass. It shattered on the hardwood floor, red liquid spreading like blood. Diane rushed to clean it up, muttering, oh God," as if the mess could somehow absorb the horror of what had just been said. But I didn't move. I just stared at my mother, this tiny, frail woman with papery skin and clouded blue eyes, who once braided my hair before school and sang me lullabies in a voice soft as snowfall. Now, she looked away, her jaw set, as if she'd been waiting 60 years to say those words and finally had the courage or cruelty to do it. We didn't finish dinner. The kids were sent home early with confused frowns and half-eaten pumpkin pie. Carol left without saying goodbye, slamming the car door so hard the garage light flickered. Mark and Diane retreated to their bedroom, leaving me alone in the living room with my mother, who sat stiffly on the floral couch, staring at the dying fire in the hearth. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, I whispered, "Why?" She didn't look at me. "Because you were a mistake." "A mistake? You had 3 of us." "Yes," she said, her voice thin but steady. "And you were the one your father didn't want. He was going to leave me. Said he couldn't afford another child, another mouth to feed. But I refused to get rid of you. So I kept you, but I resented you every single day. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. All those years, the birthday parties, the school plays, was any of it real?" She finally turned to me, her eyes glistening. "Of course it was real. I loved you. But love doesn't erase regret. And regret doesn't mean I didn't care. I wanted to hate her, to storm out and never speak to her again. But I was too tired, too old for that kind of drama. And somewhere beneath the hurt, I understood. Not excused, but understood. My parents' generation didn't talk about feelings. They buried them under duty, stoicism, and the quiet martyrdom of doing what's right. My mother had been raised by a father who believed children should be seen, not heard, and a mother who died when she was 12. She didn't know how to be soft. She only knew how to survive. The next morning, I drove to her assisted living facility. She lived in a modest 1-bedroom apartment on the 2nd floor, surrounded by doilies, framed photos of grandchildren she barely knew, and a lifetime of unspoken apologies. She opened the door in her robe, surprised to see me. I brought coffee, I said, holding up a paper cup from the diner down the street, black, 2 sugars, just how she liked it. She let me in without a word. We sat at her small kitchen table, steam curling from our cups. Outside, snow began to fall, soft, silent, forgiving. "I'm sorry I said that," she finally murmured. "I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to say it." She reached across the table and placed her wrinkled hand over mine. Her skin was cool, her grip surprisingly strong. "You know," she said, "your father changed his mind about you. The day you were born, he held you and cried. Said you had his eyes. He loved you more than either of your siblings, I think. He just never knew how to show it." I nodded. Dad had died of a heart attack at 65, never having told me he was proud of me, not even once. But I'd found a letter in his desk after he passed, addressed to me but never sent. It read, "Ellen, I don't say it enough, but you make me proud every day. Just keep being you." I never told Mom about it. Maybe I should have. We sat in silence for a while, watching the snow blanket the parking lot below. "I don't want to die with this between us," she said quietly. "Then we won't," I replied. But healing isn't linear. A week later, Carol called me, her voice brittle with tears. She told me the same thing, she said. About me. Said I was the easy one, so she never worried, but that meant she never really saw me either. I was stunned. When? Last night. I went to visit, thinking I'd make peace, and she just unloaded. Said she felt like I was always trying to be perfect to make up for you being difficult. Can you believe that? She turned us against each other without even trying. I sighed. Maybe she didn't know how else to explain her own loneliness. Carol was quiet for a long moment. Then, do you think she ever loved any of us the way we needed? I think she loved us the only way she knew how, I said softly. And maybe that's the tragedy of it all. Over the next few weeks, I started visiting Mom more often, not out of obligation, but curiosity. I wanted to understand the woman behind the silence, the resentment, the sharp tongue. One afternoon, while helping her sort through old photo albums, I found a black and white picture of her at 23, standing alone on a train platform, suitcase in hand, eyes full of fear and determination. "Where were you going?" I asked. "Chicago," she said. I was running away from home. My father had arranged a marriage to a man twice my age. I had $20 and a bus ticket. I didn't know anyone there, but I knew I'd rather starve than live someone else's life. I stared at her. "You never told us that." "Why would I?" she said with a shrug. "You kids thought your biggest problem was getting a B in algebra." And in that moment, I saw her not as my mother, but as a young woman who fought for her autonomy in a world that gave women few choices. Who married a man she barely knew because he promised stability. Who had children not out of joy, but because it was expected. Who buried her dreams so her kids could have futures. That didn't excuse the coldness, the favoritism, the years of emotional distance. But it gave context. And sometimes, context is the first step toward compassion. Mark called me a few days before Christmas. "She's been asking about you," he said. "Keeps saying she hopes you'll come to dinner." "I will," I said. "I'm scared it'll happen again," he admitted. One wrong word, and it all blows up. "Maybe," I said. Or maybe we've all been carrying so much anger that we forgot how to just be together. On Christmas Eve, I arrived early to help Diane set up. The house smelled of pine and cinnamon. Carol was already there, arranging cookies on a tray. She gave me a tentative smile, the first in weeks. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm trying to be," I said. Mom arrived in a taxi, bundled in a red coat I'd bought her last year. She moved slowly, leaning on her cane, but her eyes lit up when she saw the tree. "You decorated it just like your father used to," she said, her voice catching. We didn't talk about Thanksgiving. Not directly. But during dinner, as we passed the green beans and laughed at my nephew's impression of Santa, something shifted. The air felt lighter. Not perfect, but possible. Later, while washing dishes with Carol, she said quietly, "I think she's scared." Of what? Of being forgotten. Of dying alone. Of us hating her. I nodded. Maybe we're all scared of the same things. After dessert, Mom asked if she could say something. We gathered in the living room, the fire crackling softly. "I've made a lot of mistakes," she began, her voice unsteady. "I thought being strong meant never showing weakness. I thought loving you meant providing, not listening. I didn't know how to say, 'I'm sorry,' because no one ever said it to me." She looked at each of us, Carol, Mark, me. "I may not have been the mother you deserved, but you were always the children I needed, even when I didn't know it." Tears filled my eyes. Not because the pain was gone, but because, for the first time, it was shared. Family isn't a Hallmark card. It's messy, complicated, and often painful. We carry wounds from childhood into our gray hairs, and sometimes, the people who hurt us most are the same ones who gave us life. But healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing again and again to show up. A month later, on Christmas Eve, we gathered again, this time at my house. Carol came. Mark and Diane brought the kids. And Mom sat in my favorite armchair by the tree, wrapped in a quilt I'd made her years ago, sipping eggnog and laughing at something my youngest nephew said. No one mentioned Thanksgiving. But during dessert, as I passed her a slice of apple pie, she caught my wrist and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I squeezed her hand. "Thank you for staying." Because in the end, that's all any of us really want: to be seen, to be forgiven, and to know that, despite everything, we're still worth loving. And maybe that's enough. Epilogue. Mom passed away 2 years later, peacefully in her sleep. In her drawer, I found a small notebook filled with shaky handwriting. Page after page of letters, never sent to each of us. To Carol, "I'm sorry I compared you to Ellen. You were always enough." To Mark, "I wish I'd told you how proud I was when you became a teacher." And to me, "You were never a mistake. You were my second chance at courage." I read them aloud at her memorial. Carol held my hand. Mark cried quietly in the front row. And for the first time in our lives, we didn't just remember our mother, we finally understood her. And in that understanding, we found each other again.